Nashville makes a signing for the future, but the Predators still need to figure out what to do to make something good happen right now. On today's show, we're going to talk about why it is so important for the Preds to address the Steven Stamkos struggles and how he can turn this pointless streak around.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy game day, everyone. Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks so much for making us your first listen of the day. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to kick off this Tuesday episode shouting out our Locked On Predators insiders and our everydayers who tune in to talk Nashville Predators hockey with us. You all such fortitude. We appreciate your support. I'm Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer and co-host with Penalty Box Radio. And friends, I have a partner in crime.
Yes, you do. I'm Emma Lingen, and I'm the Predators site editor and reporter for the Hockey News.
Well, Emma, it's been a long time since we've had really great news from the Nashville Predators, but today we are going to talk real quick about a future signing that took place on yesterday. We're going to talk about Joey Willis's contract. Of course, still slogging through an unbelievably rough season right now. Today, we're going to tackle the question that is on many Predators fans' minds. What is happening with Steven Stamkos right now? We're going to talk about what may be going on and what could help Stammer find his groove again. We're also going to preview tonight's game against the Boston Bruins. Emma, it's another game day, which means take some Tums and don't set expectations. Oh my goodness. We're just...
I don't even know Tums. Maybe like a sedative of some sort might be better. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we're past the Yaroslav Askarov number of Tums I used to have to take with this season. It's been rough. Now, some good news, and we like to be optimists here. We like to pass on good news when it arrives. Yesterday, Nashville signed forward Joey Willis to his entry-level contract. This is a young player. I believe he's 19 years old, drafted in 2023 by Nashville in the 4th round. He was the 111th overall pick. And he signed, it's called an ELC. It's an entry-level contract. And for those who don't really understand quite what that means, when a team drafts a player at the NHL draft, what they really are getting are the rights to that player, and they have a certain amount of time in which to decide whether to sign that player to a contract, or when that time frame expires, they can, they release their rights. Because Joey Willis played in juniors, Nashville had 2 years to make a decision on Joey Willis, and of course, makes total sense that they opted to sign him yesterday, Emma. This is a forward, definitely somebody that I think should give Predators fans looking for a little hope in the future. This is somebody to keep an eye on. This is a name to file away in the back of your mind.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Joey Willis, you might also remember his name from Team USA at the gold medal winners at the World Juniors this year. He has, he impressed me. I will say his first, we met him at the draft. He was drafted in Nashville and we saw him at development camp. I wouldn't say that he looked bad by any means, but you don't really notice him, I guess. But he was new this past year for development camp and rookie camp. He came in with some swagger to him and you noticed him. And I think that he, at that point when we saw him at development camp and rookie camp, he was coming off that Memorial Cup championship with Saginaw. He had beat fellow Preds prospect Andrew Gibson in the Memorial Cup. There was some fun, good-natured ribbing there. But then I think, he went from that. He goes back to Saginaw. He then is selected to Team USA for the World Juniors, wins a gold medal there. Fun fact, only the 6th American ever to win both a Memorial Cup and a World Juniors. Yes, he is from Elmhurst, Illinois. So good for Joey Willis. And yeah, definitely. I mean, even before World Juniors, and he didn't even play in every game for USA at World Juniors, but he was a guy that, I don't know about you, Ann, but I noticed him in a big way at development camp and at rookie camp this year. He looked like he was playing with a lot of confidence, and he's a really smart player. Just the way he reads the game. He's also just got that motor that the Predators love. You know, they love to draft guys with that motor that just kind of doesn't stop. So, like you said, he's 19 years old. He will turn 20 on March 14th. However, because of the agreement between the CHL and the NHL, he does still have to finish out his junior season. Right now, he's with Kingston. He was traded actually
for a boatload. Yes. A boatload, y'all.
He was traded to Kingston. He was technically traded during World Juniors. He wasn't made aware of said trade until after he won a gold medal. So he does have to finish out the season with Kingston, at which point he can be assigned either to the Predators, but I don't quite see that happening, or they more likely assign him to Milwaukee, where he can, theoretically jump in and help them on a playoff push there too. So he is now, from that draft class, I believe he's the fourth player who has signed an ELC with Nashville, because you've already got guys like Tanner Molendyke, Kalen Lind, who are both in junior, Austin Roost, who has been in Milwaukee but been injured for a large portion of the season. So we're starting to see these guys. They're starting to work their way up, and Joey Willis is one that I'm very excited about.
Yeah. Offensively, he's really started to sort of pop off. And like you said, he's got that motor. He's got kind of that energy that the Predators really like when they are drafting players, sort of that intangible, it's not statistically quantified, but he really has that. And here's the thing, I would love to get him to Milwaukee, but Kingston is actually, they're a Mem Cup, as Michael McCarron says, he calls it the Mem Cup. So we're going to be cool, because Michael McCarron won the Memorial Cup, but he called it the Mem Cup. But Kingston, where Joey Willis is now, they are considered a very serious contender. So his season could go quite a ways. So we'll see how that pans out in juniors, whether we will get a chance to see him. But this is one of those players, like you said, huge leap between year one and year two for those of us who had eyes on him. Really looking forward to seeing what he brings again this year, because just he just has continued to grow and grow. And like you said, this is a kid who's had success, gold at Worlds, and also the Memorial Cup experience. He's made deep runs into the postseason. So really excited about this signing. And look, right now we want to be excited about what is coming in the more long term, because quite frankly, we have no idea what's coming in the short term. Remember, trade deadline this Friday. So far, we have already had to say goodbye to the Gus Nyquist with the Wild. That hurt my eyes this weekend, Emma. Hurt my eyes to see Gus Nyquist in those hideous colors.
Well, and then the whole, it messes with your brain a little bit, because he couldn't be 14. So because he was 14 with Nashville, but he had to switch in Minnesota. So now he's 41. Like, that's weird. And I don't know, since you brought it up, I'm going to take it there. And this is a very unpopular opinion, I have learned, but I think the old, the reverse retro that they have since brought in as their third jersey in Minnesota, the old like North Star ones, it looks like Subway. I think they're hideous.
It does. Oh my God.
Everyone's like, oh, they're classic. I'm like, no, it's ugly. Now, listen.
Wow, yes, nailed it.
I'm well aware, glass houses and whatnot. I'm well aware of the Predators' primary color, and I am not here to defend that for 1 second. This is a completely separate conversation before anyone comes at me about that. But I just have to say, since you brought it up, I just had to throw that in.
That is exactly what it is. I am so thankful you said that, because I'm like, this is bringing something as I look at these. It is Subway.
Mm-hmm.
It's Subway.
Eat fresh.
Eat fresh and return Gus Nyquist. That's the new logo for Subway, you all. Coming up, we are going to talk about another veteran that is still on the Nashville Predators roster, Steven Stamkos. Yes, Steven Stamkos has really been struggling lately. Emma and I are going to take a look at some stats, and we're going to tell you why we think it's been such a tough season, and if there is anything at this point the Predators can do to help turn things around for Stammer. Today's episode is sponsored by Wonderful Pistachios. If you are looking for a snack that is both delicious and nutritious, you need to crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they are packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. I personally love the no shells variety. It's the perfect grab and go snack for busy days, whether I am sitting here at my desk doing some work, whether I'm in my car on the way down to the arena, or if I just know I better get myself a quick protein boost. They are a terrific go-to. And if you love the crunch and the crack of opening every shell, you can get the in-shell option. It's a classic favorite. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. All right, Emma, it has been such a tough season for Steven Stamkos. And that's not a sentence we anticipated saying when it came July 2nd and we woke up like, it's real. We knew, and I think you and I laid out pretty fair expectations that the transition was going to be really difficult. This is somebody who has been with the same franchise for his entire career, the face of the franchise in ways that I'm not sure Nashville can even find somebody that it compares to. It's just a different relationship. But Steven Stamkos has struggled and is struggling right now. And let's just put the numbers out there, and then we're going to dive into what they tell us and what Nashville could do. Steven Stamkos, in his 17 complete seasons, his career average, 41 goals. That's his average, 41 goals. This season, 17 goals. His career average shooting percentage, 16.5. This season, 13.4. He has only had a lower shooting percentage he tied for it. There are 2 seasons, his rookie season, and then in 2017, 2018, it was at 12.7%. He averages over the course of his career 248 shots on goal in an 82 game season. This season, 127 shots on goal. Currently, he is having a 13-game pointless streak. It is the longest of his entire 17-year NHL career. He has not scored a goal since January 23rd. We are not counting the goal, the New York Rangers game that was credited to Sorokin. Sorokin, you just have that goal and we done talking about that. Emma, just the numbers. How surprised are you, and what do you think maybe one of the issues is for Steven Stamkos right now?
Well, I'm very surprised. I still think, and you can go back and check me on this, but I think I said over the summer, leading into this season, that I wouldn't have been surprised if he took a little bit of a step back this year, but this is more than a little bit of a step back. I think that like a little bit of a step back might have been like 30 goals instead of 40. And like that would have been okay.
Amazing right now, but it would have been a step back. Yeah.
But that's the kind of step back that I was kind of prepared for, I think, just because trying to take into account the new team, new system, new everything, like it's a lot. And I think that It's been a really long time. Like this doesn't happen often, where a guy like this who spent his entire career as the face of a franchise, and I think that, you bring up a good point that Nashville doesn't necessarily have an equivalent because Nashville doesn't have a Stanley Cup. And I think that when this guy captains your team to two of them back to back, that's a pretty good way to make yourself a face of a franchise. Now, there is still something to be said for the fact that, we talk about this all the time. The system is different. The system. Why isn't it working? And I do think that, and when I say this, I'm not trying to make excuses for them necessarily, because they are professional athletes, they're professional hockey players. You got to learn where you're, be where your skates are, or whatever John Hines used to say. Like you need to learn where you're at. And so I'm not trying to say this to give them a pass as like, well, he's Steven Stamkos, he doesn't need to learn a new system. It's like, no, he should try. And I think he is trying. After talking to him, he really is trying.
He is.
But it's so hard. It's so hard. And I think that, I mentioned this a couple weeks ago. I talked to him for a story that I'm working on. Had a really good conversation with him where I basically said, okay, tell me like I'm 5. Like we always talk about the system and how it's so different and so unique and so special. Like pretend I'm your 5-year-old son and try to explain this to me in a way that, it's sort of a nuts and bolts way. And even that question, when I said that to him, he goes, oh, wow, that's tough. Like, it's hard to even boil it down to like the basics. I'm like, are there any like key pillars that the system rests on? And he was kind of like, yeah, well, and then so basically what he said to me, and I'm going to read, a quote from what he told me. He said, I don't know if I'd say the system is challenging. It's different from what I've played, so I think there's an adjustment period for sure. And I think depending on what position you are too, if you're a center or a winger, there's different perspectives that you have to think about. And then, of course, he kind of backs himself up and says, but at the end of the day, you're still playing hockey. You're still making reads on the ice. He then goes on to say, if you're not used to playing that system, you're not used to kind of leaving the zone and getting across the ice. Because that's what we talk about with Andrew Brunette, is that it's all about proactive and moving and using your speed. So he says, when it looks like you're going to have possession, you're kind of more low and slow a little bit, waiting for plays to develop. Whereas Bruno wants us to use our speed to go to kind of push the other team's defenseman back in the neutral zone to open up that ice underneath. Now, a lot to unpack there, but I think the first point that he brings up is really important about center versus winger.
Yes.
What two positions has he played this year? He has been a center and he's been a winger. And there has been, this goes back to something, Anne, that you and I have talked about as recently as yesterday. And I'm sure it won't be the last time we talk about it. Consistency. There has been no consistency.
Yep.
So if you're trying to get a player to learn this system, then maybe leave him in one position for a little bit.
Like, just throwing it out there, because it is very different. Ultimately, yes, you're playing hockey and you are making reads on the ice, but those are different. What you are expecting your center to do and your forward to do, that's different. And he's had to learn 2 positions in this new system.
So he's basically learning 2 new systems. And so what he said, continuing on, he said, it's a unique style. It's a different style. I wouldn't say other teams don't use it. So it's not like it's rocket science, but for guys that were on different teams, especially for a long time, you're ingrained in certain systems and it just becomes natural. You're not thinking about it on the ice. You're just reacting. Now that is key, I think, because it just became muscle memory for him. When you're in a certain system, when he's with John Cooper in Tampa and he knows where he needs to be. He knows exactly where every other guy is going to be. And that's huge. Like, and how many times have we said this all year looking at this team, not just Stamkos, but anybody? I'm like, have these guys ever met before?
Right.
Like, they look like there is no chemistry. And of course, people like to reach for the juicy explanation for that. Like, oh, there's drama in the
They
locker
don't
room.
like each other.
No, it's not that. There's no chemistry because they don't spend enough time together on the ice. And that is a problem. And so it's not anything, drama. It's not a JT Miller, Elias Pettersson. Oh, they hate each other. It's nothing like that. It is truly just they don't get enough time together.
Mm-hmm.
And in the case of Steven Stamkos, he doesn't get enough time at one position. And that's the problem. And I feel like we've said this before, that Bruno has been very quick with the hook on line combinations or D pairings when they're not working. And I think that it almost looks like a panic move when he does that. And so again, I can't say for certainty. I'm not pointing at this one thing and saying, haha, this is Steven Stamkos' problem. But what I am saying is it certainly doesn't help.
And right next to that goes the argument that I have seen on social media where people say, see, he's not that talented. He just was surrounded by more talent in Tampa Bay. And building off of what you're saying, my response to that is, this is not about talent. It is about tenure. It is about knowing. I know exactly the velocity at which that puck is going to come to me from Nikita Kucherov. I know exactly what this player, I know what Braden Point's immediate response is going to be. I'm not thinking about where is he going. I know where he's going because of tenure. And Stamkos has talked about it with us this season. He's talked about timing on the power play. That is a challenge. He knew with that one-timer in his office, he knew exactly how that puck was going to be delivered. He knew before it ever got back to the point that it was coming to him. Tenure builds that. It is not a question of talent that Steven Stamkos isn't talented now that he is not surrounded by these other players. He has not been exposed. It is about tenure. And I understand why Andrew Brunette felt like, hey, we got to get a jump on this and we want to find that right combination right away. But I think in hindsight, we can see pulling the trigger early on some line combinations and not allowing chemistry and that understanding and anticipation to build between line mates has set everybody back this season. And this is not a Steven Stamkos thing. I think it is an across the board thing. I think it's a Tommy Novak thing, a Philip Forsberg thing. I think it's a Steven Stamkos thing. This has been a problem.
Yeah. And again, I think it goes back to consistency, not even just because that's something that we've talked about previously with the inconsistency with the line combinations. But I think the extra wrinkle to that in Stamkos's case is the inconsistency in which position he plays. Like, that's huge. You don't have a lot of other guys who are constantly switching like that. I mean, you had Tommy Novak a little bit kind of going from wing to center, but again, I don't he is pretty much set on the wing now. Novak is, at least lately. So it just kind of seems like there's, it's not the system, and not just the system, but the coaching and the decision making there as far as where he goes in the lineup isn't really doing him any favors. Now, I'm not saying that he is better as a winger, better as a center, whatever. It doesn't matter. It goes back to your point, which is we don't know because we haven't seen him spend enough time at either position.
Yeah.
And, it comes down to the team and the system and the line mates he's playing with. Is like, maybe with Tampa, obviously in Tampa, he had been playing on the wing. That's where he had been the most successful. Maybe in Nashville, he would be most successful as a center because, given the talent that's around him. But we don't know that because he's not given enough time at one position for an extended period of time.
Yeah. Coming up, we're going to tell you just some suggestions on what could help Steven Stamkos get out of this pointless streak and leave this season with a little bit of positivity to build on. You have heard Emma and I talk a lot about our Locked On Predators insider community. We want to invite you to be a part of that community via subtext. It is an opportunity to text with Emma and I beyond the podcast about things like potential trade ideas, thoughts on lineup decisions, what you think may be going on with Steven Stamkos, and even share your reaction to breaking news. If you want to learn more about becoming a part of our insider community via subtext, you can check out the link in our bio or the description of this episode. I'm with you, Emma. You said something earlier that I think is really important to reiterate, and it's not about making excuses, because this team and every player individually has underperformed, and there is not an excuse. We're not here to excuse it, but I do think that there are situations that require explanation and looking at the big picture, and there is nuance to this. Now, it's just a total steaming pile of disaster, but there is nuance in the steaming pile of disaster, and that's what we wanted to talk about with Stamkos. When you look at like how in these 20 some games left, can Steven Stamkos find his groove? Like, can we get him to Stella level where Stella gets her groove back? I know time is a big factor, but running out of it this season, Emma, when I think about it, I think, this off season, we may not be able to put a ton together in these 20 some games for Stamkos, statistically speaking, but in this off season, I think expectations and conversations where he can say, this is what I need to be more successful. There wasn't a lot of time for that. Even though, yes, he was signed July 1st, there wasn't a lot of time for that because it was moving here. And let me just tell you something. If you have never moved with young children, you have zero idea how challenging that is without any sort of other professional responsibility as well. It is so challenging to move with young kids, but also coming in, meeting new people, meeting Andrew Burnett, learning a system. At that point, you almost don't know what to ask. And I think this offseason, there have to be hard conversations. And Steven Stamkos has to feel like he can say, this is what I need to be successful. This is something that hurt me this season in hindsight. And I think if you're Barry Trotz, if you're Andrew Burnett, if you're a different head coach, I don't know how that's all going to sort out. But if you are a part of the leadership of this franchise, you have to listen.
I think that's a really good point. And first of all, to go back to your point about moving, I moved recently without young children. And let me tell you, I can't even imagine.
It's so hard. It's so difficult, y'all.
Adding young children on top of that was, Godspeed to anyone who has to do that. Because I did it myself with a dog, and that was
upper management. Upper management.
Yes, she was supervising the whole time. Yes. No, but I think that talking about having those conversations, that's one thing where I think, people, I know everyone's angry right now at Barry Trotz because the team's not doing well. It's one area where I think we have to give Barry Trotz a little bit of credit, because this is something that he has shown in the past that he has done, and he has done it very well, is listen to his players. What happened last year with Ryan McDonough?
Yeah.
He said, this is what I want. This is what I need. If you can figure out a way to make it happen, I would really appreciate it. And then he goes and he does it. So, and I know at the end of last season that, he had those conversations with all of the players and those guys that are considered sort of those core pieces, the Philip Forsbergs and the Roman Yossis and the UC Saroses, for example. I think Barry Trotz, I know Barry Trotz has those conversations with those guys. Mm-hmm. Now you're putting Steven Stamkos into that mix of guys, Stamkos, Marchessault, Shea, I would even put O'Reilly and maybe Shen in there, because these are the guys that Barry has brought in since taking over. And these are the guys that he thinks are going to make this team successful right now and in the future. Maybe if they're not there in the future, but they're there to build the culture, you know?
Right.
And so I think that these are the central pieces to what Barry Trotz is trying to do here. So if you look at the results on the ice, they're obviously not there. And then you have to, like you said, Barry has to listen to what these guys are saying when it comes to this is what I need to be successful. Now, those conversations hopefully are a lot more frank than the ones that the players have with us in the media,
For
you
sure.
know?
Yeah.
They're gonna tell us, you know, the diplomatic answer. Well, the system's not challenging; it's just different. You know, maybe they're going into Barry Trotz's office and saying, "Hey, man, this system sucks." Like, I'm not saying that's what's happening, but like,
They
if
need
that's
to be
what it is,
able to say that.
yes, they need to be able to say that, and Barry needs to be able to listen. And if it's, you know, a common enough thing where it's like, "Hey, we don't feel like this one, you know, this thing is working," or whatever it is. I know I keep bringing up the coaching, but maybe it's something else. I don't know.
Mhm.
Like, you don't know. And I think that those conversations have to happen after the season, and they will happen after the season, because again, this is an investment, especially a guy like Steven Stamkos making $8 million a year. This is a huge investment for Nashville, you know, for Barry Trotz, not just financially. I mean, it's not his money, it's Bill Haslam's money, but you know, it's, you know, it's a financial investment, but also an investment in the team for the present and for the future,
Yes.
trying to build a culture, trying to also, you know, establish his legacy as a GM. This is new for him too. And again, no one was looking at this back in July. No one was saying, like, Barry Trotz, what is this guy doing? They're just mad at him now because it didn't work. And so now you have to look at, like, going back to exactly what you said. This isn't a question of talent.
Mm-mm.
The talent's there.
Mhm.
So it's something else, and you got to figure out what it is. And that's, like you said, it's going to be tough conversations. There are going to be uncomfortable conversations. But at the end of the day, or at the end of the season, I should say, we need to see changes, because clearly whatever this was this year was, we absolutely do not ever need to go through that again, please and thank you. But there needs to be changes. Now, whether that's a new coaching staff, whether it's, you know, something, whether it's new players, whether it's trades in the off season, you know, I don't know what it is, but there needs to be change. That's how you know that, you know, Barry Trotz is listening. Yes, he's going to be patient, because, you know, on one hand, on the one end of the extreme, you have Andrew Brunette, who is too impatient and makes, you know, moves too quickly. You don't want to do that, but you also don't want to be too patient to a fault, you know? So that's why I think at the end of this season, that's when you have to take a really hard look in the mirror if you're Barry Trotz, and, you know, listen to what everyone around you is saying.
And Steven Stamkos, bless. And I would say this is across the board for everybody in that locker room. This is not a season that you can just flush it and say, we're coming back next year with a fresh outlook. You got to figure it out individually. These players have to look individually at what worked, what didn't work. They've got to do the mental work. You all, this is grueling on this team mentally. It is grueling. It is hard to watch, and they've got to get to a place. Hopefully they can do it this season at the, you know, with these last 20 some games left, but if not, over the offseason, they have to be able to cleanse the mental palate to come back next season with whatever the franchise looks like, whatever the roster looks like, whatever the coaching staff looks like. The players have to do the mental work, and that of course means Steven Stamkos as well. There is mental work to do today ahead of the game. It is game day. The Nashville Predators on the road in Boston. Emma, give me one key to this game. What is one thing that we can say, Nashville, if you do this, you stand a chance?
Well, long list of things to choose from, but I'm going to go with let's maybe not spend all of our time in the penalty box.
Oh my gosh, y'all killing me.
Yeah.
Killing
We
me, Emma.
don't need to be taking those early penalties, especially those ones like right off the hop. There's always like they had one against the Rangers. I think it was Cole Smith, like within like the first 20 seconds. It's like, all right, guys, come on. Like, let's not do that. Boston is a team that this is a hungry team right now because they are a sort of a bubble team in the playoff race in the East. They're kind of teetering around one of those wild card spots. And so I think that they are, they're gonna be hungry. They're without their captain right now. Brad Marchand is injured. He is not expected to play.
Tough hit.
So they just got shut out by Gus Nyquist and the Minnesota Wild on Sunday. So they're going to be in their subway gear. But yeah, the Bruins are going to be hungry and they're going to be pissed off because they just got shut out by Minnesota, and they're going to be looking for a win here, especially for their captain who's not playing.
Yeah, there's a lot that Nashville is going to have to do right. And Boston's had a rough season, but I'm with you. Boston has a lot to play for. Nashville has to figure out what they're playing for. And I think that comes to, just the people we're talking about, that core group: Steven Stamkos, Philip Forsberg, Ryan O'Reilly, Jonathan Marchessault. What are those guys playing for? If you can get one or two of those guys on fire, playing with fire. And we saw some of that from Marchessault against the Rangers. We need more of that from those guys. I think Nashville needs to be able to figure out why they're playing. They need to play the role of spoiler. Ruin someone's dreams. If your dreams are over, ruin someone else's. That's what we do around here. That's how we cope.
Yeah. That's the spirit.
Very unhealthy in interpersonal relationships. So don't carry that over into your life. I'm saying in the NHL, that's how we cope. So the Predators going to be facing Boston tonight. On tomorrow's show, Emma and I are going to recap whatever we see with our one word to describe the game. We're going to break down what the Predators did and did not do well, and keep you updated on what the Nashville Predators roster is even looking like. Friends, we got some more time before Friday, and I have a sneaky suspicion Barry Trotz's phone is warm. Before we log off, though, today, Emma, will you let everyone know where they can find you and your work?
Yes, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Emma_Lingen, and you can find my work at the Hockey News.
You can find me on social media at AnnK_Mama on Ice. You can find my work with Penalty Box Radio as well. Friends, that is going to do it for this game day episode of the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks so much for making us your first listen of the day. We will be back tomorrow with a game recap. Here's hoping for a win, but we'll tell you whatever it is. We'll see you then.